It all started with something completely ordinary: dinner. Nothing fancy, no flashing lights, no red carpets, no roaring rally crowds chanting, USA. USA. Just dinner. Donald Trump, billionaire, real estate tycoon, former president of the United States, sitting at a table in a swanky New York restaurant with a few friends and family members, looking to relax, unwind, and have a nice meal. Now, normally, when someone like Trump steps into a restaurant, it causes waves. Maybe whispers. Maybe some random guy sneaking selfies from across the room. But that night? It wasn't one of those wild celebrity-packed spots where paparazzi camp out on the sidewalks. This place was known for being upscale but quiet, the kind of joint where CEOs talk business over $100 steaks, not the kind of place where political drama usually explodes. But here's the thing about Trump: drama follows him whether he likes it or not. Love him or hate him, the man is the headline. It was late in the evening. The mood? Calm, maybe even peaceful. You could hear the soft clink of silverware on plates, couples murmuring over glasses of red wine, quiet laughter from another table near the window. The smell of grilled steaks mixed with garlic butter filled the air. Just another typical expensive dinner scene in Manhattan. Trump wasn't loud. He wasn't making speeches. He wasn't holding court or waving his arms around. He was just sitting there, casually talking, probably cracking jokes about golf scores or his latest thoughts on the economy. Pretty normal stuff. But in the corner of the dining room, there was one person who didn't see former president. He didn't see a businessman. He didn't even see a customer. He saw a target. The waiter. Young, mid-20s, thin, with that look that screamed, "I have a political podcast nobody listens to." Sharp jawline, hair that probably took too much gel to keep messy on purpose, rolled up sleeves, the whole modern rebellious vibe. And from the minute he spotted Trump sitting there, you could feel it. The shift. The tension. He wasn't starstruck. He wasn't impressed. And he definitely wasn't about to let this guy enjoy his overpriced steak in peace. Not tonight. Not on his watch. See, people forget, being a waiter isn't always just about serving food. Especially in New York. It's personal. This waiter? He wasn't just carrying plates, he was carrying an attitude. And in his mind, serving Donald Trump was like serving the enemy. You could see it in the way he walked past the table, slow, deliberate, like he wanted to be noticed but didn't want to admit it. His coworkers? They were acting like it was no big deal. They knew better. Stay cool, stay professional, don't make this a thing, you could almost hear their thoughts. But not him. He was locked in, like a guy rehearsing a scene in his head over and over again before the curtain rises. And that's when it happened. Right as Trump was cutting into his steak, medium well, of course, with ketchup on the side, because we all know by now that's his signature move, the waiter walked over. No smile. No, "Can I get you anything else, sir?" Just standing there, looming like a protest sign in human form. And with a voice loud enough to cut through the clinking plates, he dropped the first bomb, "Must be nice, huh?" Trump barely looked up. Must be nice sitting here eating filet mignon while working people like us can barely pay rent. That was it. Simple. Direct. No build-up. Just pure passive-aggressive venom dripping all over the white tablecloth. And the crazy part? He didn't stop there. Bet you don't even know how much a gallon of milk costs, huh? It wasn't just a jab, it was a statement. And suddenly, that quiet restaurant turned into the world's most awkward theater. Forks hovered mid-air. Drinks were paused mid-sip. Conversations that were happening across the room? Gone. Vanished. Everyone knew what was happening now. Donald Trump, of all people, was being called out by the waiter. Most celebrities or politicians caught in that moment would have frozen. Maybe nervously laughed it off. Maybe tried to apologize and keep the peace. Maybe sign a napkin for a quick selfie to break the tension. But Trump? He didn't move. He didn't flinch. It was the kind of challenge he'd seen before: debates, press conferences, ambush interviews on cable news, but this one was different. It wasn't a professional politician trying to get clicks. It was some angry, broke waiter, using Trump as a punching bag for everything wrong in his life. The rich. The powerful. The untouchable. That's what this waiter thought Trump was. Some cartoon villain he could roast for internet clout, thinking maybe his friends back home would call him a hero for standing up to the billionaire. But this wasn't Twitter. This was real life. And Trump was about to remind him of that fact. What happened next? Nobody was ready for it. The air in the room had shifted. The moment that waiter opened his mouth and lobbed that first insult, the atmosphere flipped like a switch. What was once just a high-end dinner became something electric. Tense, awkward, uncomfortable, and honestly, kinda thrilling. Donald Trump didn't respond right away. That's what made it wild. He just sat there for a second, steak knife in one hand, napkin resting on his knee, blinking up at the guy like he was trying to decide if he was being pranked or not. Like this dude really just said that to me? Around the room, people weren't breathing. One guy in the back slowly reached for his phone, not even to record, just to be ready. Because whatever was about to happen, it wasn't going to be quiet. Trump leaned back in his chair. Classic power move. Didn't raise his voice, didn't snap, didn't even stand up. He just looked the waiter dead in the face and said, calm as ever, "What's your name, son?" Now that threw the waiter off. He wasn't expecting that. He probably thought Trump would explode, call the manager, get him fired, or launch into some tirade about fake news and liberal losers. But Trump? Nah. He went straight into businessman mode. Cold. Calculated. The waiter hesitated. Why? You gonna have me fired? Trump raised one eyebrow, full alpha energy, and shot back, no. I just like to know who I'm talking to when I'm being insulted in the middle of dinner. Boom. Somewhere in the corner, a lady gasped. Someone dropped a fork. The manager peeked around the corner like he was trying to figure out whether to intervene or just fake a heart attack and call it a night. But the waiter? He wasn't done. Either too bold or too stupid to back down, he doubled down. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. You sit here eating like a king while the rest of us bust our asses. You think you deserve this? Just because you were born rich? There it was. The class war bomb. Now here's where Trump's face changed. That smirk faded, and the look that replaced it wasn't angry, it was annoyed. Like a parent who's heard the same excuse 100 times. Like a man who's tired of people assuming they know his life story just because they read headlines. He placed his silverware down, folded his hands in front of him, and calmly replied, "You think I was born rich? You think I didn't work? I started with a loan, sure, but I built an empire. That steak you're serving? That table you're cleaning? That's called work. You think success is handed to people? It's earned. And right now, you're proving why you'll never see it." Mic dropped. The table got quiet. Trump's family didn't say a word. They didn't need to. This wasn't about them. This was personal now. The waiter's face started to crack. The fake tough guy attitude was slipping. You could see the doubt creeping in. But instead of backing down, he tried to play it cool. "Whatever, man. You're out of touch. You don't get what it's like to struggle." Trump tilted his head. "Really? You think I don't know struggle?" You think being president of this country during a pandemic wasn't a struggle? You think dealing with lawsuits, attacks, media lies, and people like you calling me a criminal for being successful isn't a struggle? And then he did something wild. He reached inside his blazer pocket and pulled out a checkbook. Not an Amex black card. Not a stack of cash. An actual, old-school, billionaire-style checkbook. He scribbled something down slowly, folded the check once, then handed it across the table like he was passing a note in class. The waiter stared at it, confused. "Take it," Trump said. "Go buy yourself some milk. And maybe, just maybe, use the rest to invest in something other than resentment." Everyone was frozen. Someone near the bar audibly whispered, "No way. That's not real." The waiter unfolded the check. His eyes went wide. His jaw literally dropped. $10,000. The same guy who just insulted a former president, tried to embarrass him, and turned dinner into a protest? Just got handed $10,000. It wasn't hush money. It wasn't guilt. It was a power play, pure and simple. Trump wasn't trying to win favor. He wasn't trying to play victim or hero. He was making a point. Being rich isn't the problem, he said, just loud enough for everyone around to hear. Being bitter is. The waiter? He didn't even say thank you. He just stood there. Humiliated, check in hand, nothing left to say. Trump picked up his knife and fork again like nothing happened. Took another bite of steak. Nodded to his waiter, a different one now, and asked for more Diet Coke. The message had been delivered. And as quiet conversation slowly returned to the room, everyone there knew, they just witnessed something wild. Not a political stunt. Not a viral skit. A real moment. One guy tried to take down a billionaire with an attitude. And instead of canceling him, the billionaire wrote him a check. The waiter just stood there, check in hand, mouth open, ego shattered, mind scrambling for words that just wouldn't come. His whole plan had backfired, and now, instead of trending for owning Trump, he was standing in front of a packed restaurant holding a $10,000 check like some side character in a drama who just realized they're not the main event after all. It was one of those moments you could feel more than hear. The whole room sat there in that thick, electric silence, not because they didn't want to speak, but because nobody wanted to interrupt whatever was happening. The confrontation had hit that weird cinematic point where reality feels like a movie scene, and you're scared to blink in case you miss the next plot twist. Trump? He didn't flinch. Didn't brag. Didn't start gloating like some politician running victory laps. Nah. He stayed sitting, one arm resting on the table, leaning slightly back in that casual, "I've done this before" posture. No need to scream when you've already won. Finally, the waiter found his voice again, but it wasn't that cocky tone he had before. It was cracked. Hesitant. Like someone still fighting but realizing the punches aren't landing anymore. "I don't need your charity," the waiter finally muttered, his eyes darting around the restaurant, realizing that he had no backup, no applause, just eyes staring at him like a failed performer after bombing on stage. Trump tilted his head, calm. "It's not charity. It's a lesson. You don't have to take it. You can rip it up, throw it away, whatever you want. Doesn't change the fact that bitterness costs more than steak." That line. That one landed. The guy didn't rip it up, though. He couldn't. Pride was one thing, but 10 grand staring him in the face? That's rent. That's student loan payments. That's credit card debt gone in an instant. And worst of all, the whole restaurant knew he wasn't walking away from that. You could see the war happening behind his eyes. Pride was telling him to tear the check in half right there. Reality was telling him, "Bro, you work for tips and shifts. Shut up, take the money, go home." Trump, sensing the war happening, didn't even press. He just leaned forward slightly and said, "Do you know how I built what I built? I didn't sit around being bitter about other people's success. I worked. I took risks. I didn't cry about what somebody else had, I figured out how to build it myself. And I sure as hell didn't stand tableside whining about filet mignon when I was supposed to be doing my job. It was brutal, but it wasn't mean." There was something in the way Trump delivered it, sharp, yeah, but almost like a father giving advice to a son who just blew his first paycheck on sneakers instead of rent. But the best part? Trump wasn't done making the moment count. As the tension reached its absolute peak, Trump glanced around the restaurant, addressing the whole room now, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Anybody else want to complain about success while I'm here? Speak now, I'm feeling generous tonight." It was bold. Arrogant. Classic Trump. And honestly, kind of hilarious. Nobody answered. Not because they didn't have opinions, New Yorkers always have opinions, but because even the biggest Trump haters in the room could tell, this wasn't just dinner anymore. This was a full-on live event, and they'd accidentally scored front-row seats. One guy near the back, wearing a Patagonia vest and pretending not to care, actually smirked. Even he had to admit, that was kinda savage. Meanwhile, the waiter was cooked. There was no comeback sharp enough to save him. The whole "roast the rich guy" thing works on TikTok when you've got editing, background music, and 3 takes to get it right. But in real life? In front of people? Against someone who's literally debated presidents on national TV? Forget about it. But then, the unexpected twist. The other waitstaff? They started stepping up. Quietly at first, one of them whispered, "Sorry, sir, about him." Totally unprofessional. Another nodded quickly, embarrassed, clearly not wanting to lose their job over someone else's pride parade. The manager finally arrived, pale as a ghost, apologizing 100 times a second, offering to comp the whole meal, bring dessert, wash Trump's car, whatever it took to untangle this disaster. And Trump? Just waved it off, cool as ever. Nah. Don't fire him. Let him keep the job. But next time he wants to lecture somebody about work ethic, tell him to do it on his day off. That's when it happened, the ripple of laughter. Not forced, not awkward, but real. First from the tables nearby, then spreading outward like ripples in a pond. People weren't laughing at the waiter, they were laughing at the whole ridiculousness of the situation. The tension broke, like a popped balloon. Trump took another bite of steak, wiped his mouth with a napkin, and raised his glass of Diet Coke with a small grin. "To hard work, ladies and gentlemen." The toast wasn't political. It wasn't a campaign speech. It was just a reminder, you can hate him, mock him, meme him, but the man knows how to turn an ambush into a standing ovation. Phones were out. Tweets were flying. The video snippets were starting to roll. And whether that waiter cashed the check or framed it on his bedroom wall as a reminder of the worst flex of his life, one thing was certain, this wasn't just dinner anymore. This was history. The laughter still hung in the air as Trump casually lifted his glass of Diet Coke. That one simple toast, to hard work, flipped the whole room. It wasn't loud, it wasn't performative, but it hit different because everyone in that restaurant knew they had just witnessed something unreal. And that's when it started. The phones weren't just out now, they were rolling. Videos. Snippets. Screen captures. One lady had her iPhone angled just right to catch Trump lifting his glass, and before he could even take a sip, the clip was already getting shared on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Within minutes, it had a caption, "Waiter disrespects Trump, Trump tips $10,000 and roasts him with a single sentence." Boom. Instant headline. You could literally feel the buzz vibrating through the room, not just from people's phones, but from the adrenaline kicking in. Everyone wanted to tell someone. Even people who didn't like Trump had this weird grin like, okay, that was cold. Respect. Meanwhile, the manager was still stumbling over apologies, but Trump just waved him off like someone brushing crumbs off his lapel. Relax, he muttered. He embarrassed himself, not me. It wasn't cocky, it was surgical. But here's where things got wild. By the time Trump finished that next sip of Diet Coke, his team, and I'm talking sharp-dressed men and women you know were ex-Secret Service or Wall Street killers, were already on their phones, not just scrolling, but strategizing. Why? Because they knew the rule of modern politics: if something crazy happens, own it before your enemies spin it. And sure enough, before the steak even hit halfway done, one of Trump's guys leaned down and whispered, "It's going viral, sir. Already got 1 million views on TikTok. Trump gives $10,000 to broke waiter who tried to roast him." Trump didn't even blink. Just nodded once. Good. Let them see it. Because here's the thing about Trump, love him or hate him, the guy knows media like sharks know blood in the water. And in this case? He was the shark, and that poor waiter was the guy doing cannonballs with a paper cut. Now, back in the kitchen, the waiter was in full spiral mode. He was pacing, hands running through his hair, face pale, muttering stuff under his breath like, "Why did I say that? Why did I do that?" The kitchen staff were pretending not to notice, but you know how kitchens are, everybody was peeking around corners, whispering, texting their friends. Bro, I just watched a man's whole ego get shattered like glass. Meanwhile, the rest of the restaurant was practically buzzing like a beehive. Conversation started up again, but they weren't about the wine or the pasta. Everyone was dissecting the moment like sports commentators breaking down a wild fourth-quarter play. Did you see how he just stayed calm the whole time? Bro, he pulled out a checkbook. A checkbook. And then someone else, man. I don't even like Trump. But that was straight savage. It didn't matter where people stood politically, what just happened was bigger than politics. It was real, unscripted, raw. That's the thing people don't get. Americans can smell fake a mile away, but they love watching someone handle disrespect with precision. Trump wasn't just sitting in that restaurant anymore, he was owning it. And then the first blog post dropped. Someone at the New York Post was quick. Probably someone's cousin in that restaurant who texted the whole thing live. The headline: Trump hands $10,000 to rude waiter after savage roast, the internet explodes. And explode it did. The TikTok clips started flooding in, some from angles where Trump's face was in full focus, cool as a polar bear, others zoomed on the waiter's shaking hands as he held the check like it was radioactive. But then came the reactions. Big accounts. Influencers. Even people who normally roasted Trump daily were like, okay, politics aside, that was cold. Respect. Imagine trying to embarrass someone and they tip you $10,000 to go drink milk and sit down. Bruh. It was everywhere. Reddit. Twitter. Instagram Reels. Reaction videos. Meme edits. Someone already slapped Drake's "nonstop" under it with a caption, "Look, I just flipped the switch." Trump didn't smile at the attention, but you could see the flicker of satisfaction in his eyes. This wasn't just dinner anymore. This was domination. And yet, he didn't act like someone who just won a championship. He just kept eating his steak, nodding politely to the staff that weren't disrespectful, occasionally giving that sideways grin that said, "You're welcome for the show." Meanwhile, outside? You guessed it, reporters were starting to arrive. Lights flashing, cameras already out, TMZ dudes scrambling for their phones, random people pretending to be concerned citizens lining up just to say they were there when it happened. Inside that restaurant, Trump finished his last bite, wiped his mouth one last time, placed his silverware together on the plate like someone closing a case file, and stood up, slowly, deliberately, giving the room a moment to soak in what just went down. And before leaving, he turned to the remaining staff, nodded once, and said, loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear, "You can disrespect me, but you can't outwork me. Remember that." Phones up. Flashbulbs firing. And just like that, he walked out the door. As Trump stepped through the restaurant's front doors, the cool night air hit like a burst of electricity, but not as electric as the scene waiting for him outside. Flashes everywhere. Reporters yelling. Microphones being shoved past security. Paparazzi scrambling like rats in a maze, tripping over each other just to get the shot. And in the middle of it all, Trump, standing there like he was on the cover of GQ, tie slightly loosened, jacket open, not flustered, not annoyed, just in control. The chant started small, building from the edges of the sidewalk, "Trump. Trump. Trump." Now, these weren't campaign rally people, not MAGA hats and merch. These were just New Yorkers who happened to be nearby, who caught the video going viral on their phones while walking down the street, and suddenly realized they were standing next to the main character of the internet's latest movie. And the internet? It was on fire. Clips of Trump calmly tipping the waiter, the infamous "bitterness doesn't pay the rent" line, that perfect little glass of milk joke, it was all looping everywhere. Fox News broke in with a breaking alert before the appetizers had cooled. Trump tips $10,000 after being disrespected, crowd cheers. But here's the wild part, even CNN was covering it. Sure, their anchor was already in spin mode. Well, this was clearly performative, a billionaire waving money to seem relatable, didn't matter. By the time they were mid-sentence, clips of Barstool Sports and Joe Rogan's team reacting to it were taking over timelines. One meme had already surfaced. A screenshot of the waiter's stunned face, with the caption, "When you try to roast a billionaire but forget he's holding Uno reverse cards." Savage. Now inside that restaurant, the vibe had completely flipped. The poor waiter, still holding that cursed $10,000 check, looked like someone who realized mid-roller coaster ride that they weren't tall enough for the ride. You could practically see his regret radiating off him like steam from a busted kettle. Other waitstaff whispered to each other, "He's gonna quit. For sure. He's not coming back tomorrow." But outside, the world was moving fast. One reporter finally managed to squeeze her mic through the bodies, practically shouting, "Mr. Trump, was that whole moment planned? Was it staged for the cameras?" Trump didn't even break stride. He kept walking toward his motorcade, but threw a grin over his shoulder and fired back, "Sweetheart, I don't need to stage anything. I just am the story." Mic drop. That one line, faster than the $10,000 check, faster than the steak knife hitting the plate, hit social media like a sledgehammer through drywall. Memes, reaction clips, TikTok stitches of teenagers pretending to faint over how cold that was. But the biggest twist? Even some of Trump's political opponents couldn't resist chiming in. One progressive influencer posted, "I can't stand the guy, but that's one of the most brutal flexes I've ever seen in public. Honestly? Respect where it's due." And then came the brand accounts. Fast food chains, sneaker brands, even random toothpaste companies started tweeting things like, "Our toothpaste, $3.50. That Trump comeback? Priceless." By the time Trump's motorcade pulled away from the curb, the headlines were already circulating globally. London. Paris. Tokyo. Everybody knew the story now, billionaire gets insulted. Drops $10,000 like it's loose change. Turns awkward dinner into viral history. And here's the thing about Trump, people kept waiting for the gotcha. Waiting for someone to reveal it was fake, or staged, or some elaborate marketing scheme. But it wasn't. It was just real. Ugly. Awkward. Hilarious. And exactly the kind of live drama the internet can't resist. Back at his hotel that night, Trump's team was already fielding offers. Late-night shows begging for a soundbite. Podcast invites. Merch ideas with "bitterness doesn't pay the rent" slapped on hoodies. Someone even mocked up a glass of milk emoji next to Trump's face with the phrase, "Stay hydrated, stay humble." And the waiter? Well, his TikTok did go viral later that night. Not for the reason he wanted, though. His video trying to explain why he did what he did was buried under thousands of comments like, "Bro got $10,000 and still took the L." Moral of the story: don't beef with billionaires unless you brought a better punchline. Trump, undefeated in restaurants. No amount of backpedaling could save him now. He wasn't famous. He was a lesson. Meanwhile, Trump? He was already on to the next thing. Meetings, phone calls, strategy sessions for the campaign trail, Diet Coke in hand, smiling like a lion that just ate the biggest steak in the savannah. And the moment? Locked in history. Forever replayed in clips titled, "A Waiter Disrespected Donald Trump for Being Rich." What happened next shocked everyone. Because in the end, that's the story of Donald J. Trump, hated by many. Respected by more. Outworked by none. And whether you love him or not, you can't look away. But what do you think, power move or petty flex? Drop it in the comments. Smash that like, hit subscribe, and if you want more wild Trump stories, click the next video. Trust me, it's even crazier.